Now, one thing to be aware of is that manure in any of its forms supplies a similar amount of both phosphorus and nitrogen, even though nitrogen is needed in greater amounts by plants. For example, the analysis of a common pelleted chicken manure is 4-3-2. What this means is that if a producer is commonly using manure rather than legumes to meet their nitrogen requirement, they will be applying way more phosphorus than is needed. And all that phosphorus is liable to move to surface waters where it can be a serious pollutant. Make sure farmers are aware of this issue. If their soil tests are showing sufficient phosphorus, they may want to find a nitrogen source other than manure. Manure, in many forms, is a very common fertilizer on organic field crop farms. It's a potent and effective source of both macro and micronutrients, and it's also an important source of organic matter. But with great power comes great responsibility. Manure can be detrimental in two possible ways. It can leave the soil and pollute the environment, and it can contaminate food with pathogens. The unintended consequences are so serious that the NOP regulates how manure is applied as a fertilizer. Let's take a look. First thing is we have to make sure that when applying manure, we're not also applying prohibited substances. Section 205-203C states that the producer must manage animal materials in a manner that does not contribute to the contamination of crops, soil, or water by plant nutrients, pathogenic organisms, heavy metals, or residues of prohibited substances. All right, now you have to be sure that it's applied in a way that does not harm the environment. This can be the result of failing to assure proper manure application, because manure can leave the farm, flow into surface waters, and the nutrients in the manure will feed algae that in their growth pull most of the oxygen out of the water, killing the fish and making the waterway unusable for recreation. These are also called dead zones, and they're a problem in all agricultural areas across the entire United States. To prevent surface water contamination, farmers need to be careful when applying manure to frozen ground. Injecting manure into soil when it rains, or it's predicted to rain, can help minimize nutrient runoff. During fall, spring, or summer, it's best to avoid spreading manure when it rains or is predicted to rain, and incorporate it as soon as possible. In addition, grassed buffer strips between fields and waterways, like this one, can trap, catch, and prevent manure running off the field. It's also a best practice to spread manure at an appropriate rate. The soil cannot absorb too much manure, and this rate will change based on the soil's texture as well as the level of organic matter. These best practices help farmers follow NOP guidelines and protect our environment. They also keep more nitrogen in the soil for use by crops. Manure left on the surface volatilizes and is lost to the air. The other risk from manure is contaminating food with pathogens. The most common problem is E. coli. For this reason, the NOP mandates in 205-203C1 that raw manure must be applied at least 90 days before the harvest of a crop whose edible portion does not come in contact with the soil. And this applies to basically all of our grain crops. However, if you have a farmer growing pumpkins or potatoes or any other crop for human consumption where the edible portion does touch the soil, then raw manure would need to be applied 120 days before harvest. Properly composted manure poses a low risk of contamination, and there is no exclusion window for its application. Now be sure to realize that many processed organic manure products, like your chicken pellets, have been heat treated and composted so that they can be side dressed on growing crops inside of the 90-day window. Animal manures are commonly allowed fertilizers, but again, with great power comes great responsibility.